There we go. All right, I think we're 6:30. Call the meeting to order. Sarah, if you can do roll call, please.
One moment. We can get back here. Hill. Here. Trudell. Here. Carter.
Here.
Early.
Here.
Baumler.
Here.
Schindel here. Garterbark.
Here. Everybody's present. Brian, you want to start us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Debbie, do we have anything up there for public comment? No public comment. Next, we'll looking for approval of the minutes for the December 11th regular meeting as well as the December 21st special meeting.
I'll move to approve those minutes.
Second.
Motion by Sarah, second by Chad. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're going to actually move up. We've got a lot of student recognition people here today, so we're going to move student recognition up before the financial report. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Oh,
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes.
This year, the high school drama team had 26 members, one of our largest groups. And we worked our way to returning to state, which was at UW Green Bay. Overall, the group received an all-state, which is like a silver rating. And then the organization gives out extra little awards. And this year, we received every one that they offered.
Really?
So we had outstanding ensemble, outstanding technical theater. One of our performers got outstanding acting, and I even got outstanding directing. So with us today, we have Addison Bors. He is also our student director. Tim Cornett, Aiden Fribble, Brianna Brzezinski, Emily Van Dyke, Anna Felice, Sammy Anderly, and Gunnar Lottie.
Awesome. Would any of you like to share anything about the experience? We'd love to hear it.
I just think personally being able to go to state was just such a joyous experience for me, as I'd never gone before. I just feel like the opportunity was so rich and I enjoyed every second of it.
That's awesome. Anybody else?
This year is, so I'm a senior, so unfortunately this is my first and last year joining this program, but honestly, I regret nothing. It has been one of the best experiences in my high school life, and I would 100% do it all over again.
Very cool.
I had a really great time student directing this year, working with everyone that was a part of the team this year. We worked really hard and it all paid off as soon as we made it to state and we got all those awards, and I had such a great time with everybody.
Well, congratulations, everybody, and please pass along the congratulations also to the other students that weren't able to be here tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you guys step up here a little bit, or a little bit further up. Just yes, a little bit. Quick picture. Make sure you can see Debbie.
I think we go down. We on the
Okay, ready? Jeez, I'm not a director.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Mr. Gander, a special congratulations to you. I know you've put in so many years with this program, and it was awesome to see you recognized, so congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Next up, I think we've got the high school cross-country state qualifiers. Hi there.
Hi, where do you want me to stand?
You're good right there. The camera is on top of the TV, so the public will be watching.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I don't want to block anybody's view.
Not mine.
Well, these are 3 of our cross-country team runners, and we did advance all 3 runners to state this year, as you already know. Ben Adams, he's our solo guy, making state this year. Ben has just been a champion since he came out for cross-country. This was his junior year. He advanced to state last year as well, state again this year. And what I like to tell people about Ben Adams, a lot of people look and they're like, well, Ben, he's just so talented. And yet the same people say, I always see him out running. It's amazing how talent comes with a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But Ben Adams did a fantastic job this year, conference champion, studded sectionals, and improved your time at the state course by what, over 30 seconds, I think? Yeah, just really ran fantastic. Haley Delzer, first year at state this year, also a junior. She's been a great athlete for us as well. Haley is one who works really hard, but doesn't say a whole lot when I'm around. She might talk more when I'm not. Highlights of Haley Delzer. Last year, it actually was, not this past season, the season before. I remember before me coming up to Haley because I could see she's a great athlete, great effort and determination. I said, Haley, for this meet, I really want you to try to stick with Brooke and Hannah. They were the top 2 girls for us last year. And Haley said, I always try to stick with them. Well, it showed through this year. Haley was fantastic. First team all conference, advanced to state through the sectional. First, second? You're giving me the look. Okay, second team all conference. Advanced through the sectional, ran an incredible race at state, which is probably the hardest course we run all year, is at state. Really did well. That's Haley Delzer. And then Brooke Hodquist. She is a workhorse, and it shows. She pushes probably too hard sometimes, and she's one of the rare athletes like a Ben Adams who I sometimes have to tell him, I want you to run slower because it's going to help you be better. Brooke had a phenomenal year. She battled through sometimes when her body just wanted to say no. Brooke's mind said, but we're going to do it. And you could see it in her because she just has grit and determination. And she ran fantastic. First team all conference. Okay. That one right. Third overall at sectional. And then, yeah, ran a gutsy race through the state meet. Learned a lot. It was cold and hilly. Ran really well. Great athlete. All 3 of these kids, they work for everything that they have. And we try to preach that to the rest of the team. So great kids, great leaders, great season.
So if you don't mind me asking, or the board members asked, what was the best or the hardest part of the state meet or the course?
For me, at least, because all the guys in all divisions ran before the girls. So since it was such a cold meet, there wasn't much of us to do while we were there. So we don't want to burn out trying to like watch them and do all this stuff. So we're kind of just sitting cold, waiting to race. And then you get out on this course and it's just even more cold with the wind in your face and then all the hills that you have to go through each and every mile.
Very cool.
I would agree. Just the terrain of the course and the hills and all the turns do make it difficult.
Mile 2 and 3 were the worst.
Specifically.
The hills got me at the end.
Congratulations, you guys.
Great work, guys.
You want me in there?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, ready? The cheese. Sounds
None
good.
of us said she was down.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice job, guys. Congratulations.
That's part of the meeting.
Yes.
All right, now we're on to the financial report.
Take a look at the financial report. Cash on hand as of December 1, 2023, in the amount of $1,337,976. You can see a list of December reimbursements in the amount of $3,824,499. A couple of the key receipts was the second of 4 state equalization aid payments and also special education categorical aid payment. December disbursements then in the amount of $2,820,937. One of the differences this month is that's 3 payrolls, which happens every once in a while with their calendar. Cash on hand then as of January 1, 2024, in the amount of $2,341,538. January disbursements, $352,416. There was no receipts, and then cash on hand as of today, January 8th, 2024 is $1,989,122. Any questions on this page? Moving to the second page, going through the different funds. As you know, the Fund 21 is broken into 3 parts now. First one being the Veterans Memorial. There was $143 in interest. Balance is $31,721, and all of that amount is held in the WISC account. The second part of Fund 21 is Scholarship Fund. There was $1,386 in donations, $733 in interest, brought it to a balance of $175,451. And you can see the majority is held in the WISC account, and then a portion is held in the bank. And then the last part of Fund 21 is the Activity Fund. There was $67,122 in receipts, $49,903 in expenditures, brought that balance to $294,814. Again, about 2/3 of that is in the WISC, and the remainder is in the bank. And then that brought to debt service funds 3839. There was $649 in interest, and brought a balance to $143,539. And all of that is held in the WISC investment account. Fund 41, there was $2 in interest, and all of it is held in WISC. The balance is $139,871. Capital improvement, Fund 46, there's $30,855 in interest, brings the balance to $3,589,186. You can see a vast majority of that is in the WISC, and then a small amount is in the bank. Fund 49, the Capital Referendum Fund, $86,161 in interest, a balance of $31,644,739, and that's held in the WISC investment account. Fund 73, there's $91,629 in interest and investment gains, expenditures of $10,158, brought the balance of $1,906,711. Any questions on the funds?
Ken?
Move that we accept the financial report and approve the payment request in the amount of $1,432,747.
Well, second.
Emily?
Mhm.
Motion by Ken, second by Emily. Any other discussion? If not, Sarah, can you do roll call, please?
Hill,
Yes.
Trudell,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Early,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Schindel, yes, Gardner.
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, Reports and discussion. Obviously, we'll flip over the student recognition, move to the student representative report.
So this is the club updates for January. First off, starting with student council. Student council will provide an array of snacks and breakfast items for students during our finals, which are coming up on January 18th and 19th. We are also preparing to host a special education awareness night to raise funds for the Special Olympics on February 9th in collaboration with the girls basketball team. And then on February 22nd, we will host a Red Cross blood drive in collaboration with the United Methodist Church.
And then for FBLA, they have the Holidays Without Hunger food drive, the community service with Cottages Assisted Living, and then they have their holiday cookie baking and giving plates to Kingdom Come Food Pantry at the Cottages Assisted Living and school staff and at the high school and the district office as well. And then they have an upcoming CCC event, which is January 23rd.
What's CCC?
I don't really know, actually. They never really told us. Next, we have FFA, Wisconsin FFA Halftime Conference on January 12th and 15th, District LDE Speaking Contest on January 29th, Regional LDE Speaking Contest, Sectional LDE Speaking Contest, and then FFA Week Activities. They have a service project with NAHS named Empty Bowls to help Kingdom Come Food Pantry by selling these artisan bowls in soup.
And then Link Crew leaders met with the freshmen before break, and then they ran an activity where they focused on setting small goals to help achieve bigger goals. They also discussed the scheduling process and how it works, and schedule classes for next year coming up soon next week in January.
Next up is forensics. The students are busy developing their presentations, and we are meeting with coaches as well as other teachers to get our presentations polished for our first event, which will be on February 5th. We will also be hosting a conference this year at our school.
And the drama team is finishing up the season with a team dinner this Thursday, highlighting and recognizing those members who contributed to the overall success of the one-act play, which you just seen earlier. And then the club will be on a short hiatus while preparing for its spring production. Some members are continuing their involvement by participating in the all-school musical, The Addams Family. And the performances will be March 14th through the 17th. And then there's more information to be here this month.
On January 10th marks their first competition of the season. They'll be hosting Gillette and Lena at 1:30 p.m. Their second competition will be January 25th at O'Connell. Wish them luck for this competition. For the first half, Alina, Tim, Grace Molitor, Brooke Hockowitz, and Cole Lucille. Second half, Alina, Tim, Landon Delphos, Josie Holtz, and Griffin Kopke. And the alternatives this year are Colton Krieger and Lisa Tucker. The shadows are Aaron Yonke, Addison Santee, Levi Momarks, Isaiah Holtz, Riley Weilet, and Evan Dobrat.
And then for NHS, they had their December bake raffle, which was a success, and they raised $438 to help pay for their Tide blanket supplies. And then taking advantage of a wonderful holiday sale, they began purchasing the Tide blanket kits from Joann Fabrics. And then they raised enough money to purchase about 60 blankets. Phase 2 of their club's community service project is making those blankets for our local hospitals. They have 3 days planned in February, the 12th, 19th, and 26th. Some members even plan to use some of their study hall and flex time to make some of these blankets as well.
And that is everything we have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Always.
Yeah, we always appreciate this.
Okay, district administrator's report.
So starting out with the month in review, I had an opportunity to attend multiple conferences this past month. As always, our students did fantastic. We greatly appreciate the time and effort that our students as well as the advisors put into this. We appreciate the staff, the parents, all the people who attend, the accompanists. It's a big production. We get to see the concert itself, but there's a ton of work that starts months in advance. When we attend those performances, our students really appreciate that. When they see it's a packed house, it's just that much more exciting for them. So thank you. Also had a chance to share an opportunity, and Ms. Terry Olson has been working on this. It's a multi-district consortium with CISA 8. It's working with a company called Care Solace, and this is an opportunity for us to bring resources for mental health navigation to our students, staff, parents, and community members. We're looking to roll this out in February, and we'll have an opportunity to share more information with you then. But it's exciting because I think a lot of folks don't know what resources are out there, and this will assist them with that. Members of our team worked together recently to get a 4K registration program up and online and updated. That's going to be live on January 15th. And so for all those folks out there listening, if you have a child that you're anticipating to be in 4K this next year, we're asking that you, as soon as that comes live on January 15th, to get on there and get registered. The sooner that we can determine the number of students we have, the better we can support those requests from families. Some of the other things going on, reminder for parents and guardians, when we are anticipating inclement weather. I'm sorry, what was that? Anticipating inclement weather. We encourage you to view the news and the media outlets right away in the morning. Usually those decisions are being made earlier than 5:15 in the morning so that you can be able to make your plans in case school were to be canceled. Just so everybody knows, our current forecast right now is we're part of a storm warning, and we've received multiple updates this morning at 9 o'clock, this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. We're scheduled for a final forecast to determine whether or not we're going to have school. It's looking like we're going to get somewhere between 6 and 8 inches in our area. They are 90% sure that we're going to get 4 inches. They're 80% sure that we're going to get 6 inches, and 8 inches, it's 50-50 at this point. Now, I will say that between 9 this morning and 2 o'clock, the storm area actually expanded. So it doesn't look like it's getting better. It looks like it's getting worse. So I know there were some young people that were excited to get the answer already today, but they're going to have to hold off till tomorrow morning. Also, give you an update. A bid pack was sent out yesterday from Encompass, or not Encompass, from Nexus, relative to the roof work that needs to be done at O'Connell Falls Elementary, which is part of our referendum. And the goal is to get those bids back in time for you, the board, to review at the February board meeting. So just an FYI on that. As far as one last thing that I didn't have on here, but chance to attend some different athletic events. And again, similar to the concert, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Recently had a chance to go to the wrestling meet. They had suicide awareness that was going on. A lot of folks that were working with the raffles to raise money. And so, again, tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into the athletic piece, but then when you do those activities, even more so. So kudos to those people that were behind the scenes making that happen. So that's the month in review. Any questions on any of that? Okay.
Okay. April 2024 election update.
Yep. So as you know, Ken decided that he filed non-candidacy paperwork. And so we're going to honor Ken and his time on the board another time, but that's just an update. And then both Clint and Brian, you filed your candidacy paperwork. And then we also have Ms. Ginny O'Hara, who put her paperwork in. So we anticipate that we have 3 openings in April, and we have 3 candidates on the ballot. The names will be listed on the ballot, Brian, and then Clint, and then Ginny. So looking forward to the April election.
Okay.
Clint, I just want to thank Brian for running again. And it's I got on the board after I retired, so I can't imagine what it's like to be a working person and take this on. So, but it's something that's needed and it's appreciated. And Jenny, thank you for stepping up. I guess I'm very well satisfied that we've got we'll have an excellent board that will move forward in the best interest of the district. And thank you all.
And just to
Thank you, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And just a reminder, we talked about it at the last board meeting, but Ken is going to be recognized at the state convention next week for his 20 years of service. So looking forward to forward to that. So thank you. All right, and then a 4K programming update.
So we've listed 4K programming. It's not an action item this evening because, as we've talked about in the past, the goal is to give the board information, make sure that you have a chance to kind of mull that over, consider it an opportunity if community members want to give you feedback before it does come to you as an action item. So I always kind of like to do the bottom line up front. What we're going to be asking is for the board to consider taking action at the February board meeting. This is related, as you are most likely aware, to our collaboration with Encompass. So we started this process, it's probably been close to 4 years ago now, where we've been looking to do a collaboration with a child care organization. We interacted with several different potentials during that first year, and it wasn't until Encompass came that we actually started seeing the potential for this to move forward. About 18 months ago, we started having more serious discussions about what it would take for Encompass to be able to come into our O'Connell Falls district and the ability for them to create a child care that they felt they could sustain over time. As you can imagine, this is a big, big endeavor for them. One of the things that we did is we wrote a letter of support that went to their board to say that if you're willing to come into our community, we're willing to work together with you. And that was based on me asking you, the board, were you willing to do that? And at the time you said, yes, you were. So now we're starting to get more for the action plan, course of action. What does that actually look like? One of the things that our work with Encompass has yielded is they're sharing with us in different school districts where they have done something similar. They've seen an increase in the number of students at the 4K that are going to need support and service. So rather than wait until the need presents itself, we're trying to do some of the work ahead of time. So if this does come to fruition, we're not totally building the plane while we're flying it. We're hoping to at least have some of that plane built. One of the pieces is trying to figure out how and what might that look like if we need to increase 4K sections. So we are very excited about the 4K programming that we have now. We've had an opportunity to work with our 4K staff, listen to some of their thoughts, some of their concerns. They're proud of the work that they've done over the years, and they want to make sure that we continue to have quality 4K programming. With that in mind, we also need to be thoughtful of the environments that we work in. So right now, O'Connell Falls Elementary School is pretty strapped for space. So if we need to increase programming, I don't anticipate that it's only going to be at 4K. And what I mean by that is, if we have an uptick in 4K, that's most likely because we have families that decide they want to bring their kids to O'Connell Falls because now there's childcare here. Well, the chance that they only have a 4K child is probably not realistic. So we very well may see an uptick in the number of students across K-12. With that in mind, Encompass is willing to work with us relative to having a 4K section on their site. One of the things that we have is an opportunity to either we go through and we identify a staff member, and that staff member then is a member of our team and yet is working through Encompass at their site, or we have a model where Encompass goes and they hire the person and that person interacts with our 4K staff, but they're an employee of Encompass. Having had a chance to get feedback from our administrative team, feedback from our 4K staff, there's anxiety. I mean, there's a lot of potential change here. And so with that in mind, we are thoughtful that we would recommend the model that we would be doing the hiring, because we would have a little bit more control over that process and move this thing forward in a manner that we feel we can sustain it and also be thoughtful of how we implement it. Some of the things that will be a potential change as we work through this is Kid Station. Currently, we have Kid Station at both Abrams Elementary and O'Connell Falls Elementary. What we're anticipating right now In our collaboration with Encompass, Encompass is saying that they would be able to do wraparound programming through their site here in O'Connell Falls. They would actually be able to open earlier than we open. They would be able to stay a little bit later than we currently stay. And they also have access to some opportunities for families that need fiscal assistance for their programming that we can't provide. That's the upside. The downside is their cost for programming is more than our cost for programming. Now, I will say that they're a nonprofit organization, but they're a nonprofit organization that's quite a bit smaller than us. So our ability, we've actually had a few years in the past where we've run Kids Station in the red, and we were able to still accomplish that because we had a big enough fund balance. We could survive a couple of years that were in the red. When you have a startup company like Encompass, even though that they're nonprofit, they can't afford that level that we can. So that's one of the issues that is a potential detractor. However, I think that they're going to be able to serve more families, and they're going to be able to provide a greater level of services to those families. One of the things that we're ultimately looking for is that you, the board, in February, are willing to approve an FTE up to 1.0. So we're anticipating that a 0.5 need would be there if we have a section that would be taught at the Encompass site. However, you may or may not be able to get a person at a 0.5. You might have to hire 1.0 and then figure out a way to utilize that other half time in our elementary school. That's the action that we're asking you to think about, because it's a staffing change in order to support this. Worked with Kim to take a look, and one of the things that there's way more what ifs than we have answers for right now. So we're doing what we can to try to be thoughtful in our anticipation, and then over the next 6-8 months, we're going to get that information and then adjust accordingly. Kim and I have tried to look at worst case scenarios and determine, will we be able to, within the budget, deal with the cost of this first year startup? And the answer is yes. As we go into then the next year, if we need that section, that means that there was more 4K students than we have in our normal system right now. So that's going to bring in some dollars through per pupil allocations into the district. How much? Well, you don't know until you figure out what your total number of 4K is. Right. One of the things that we've been adamant about is when we do this registration process, we're going to fill our internal sections before we build a section at Encompass. And Encompass understands that. Encompass is telling us, you're not going to have that issue. You're going to have 4K kids come in. They said it might not happen in that first year. So if it doesn't, well, then we'll run without that 4K at the Encompass. But they're saying it's going to happen. And they're basing that on the work that they've done in other districts like Pulaski and West Appear and places like that. So I share this with you. There's been a lot of time and effort to take a look at this from many different angles. The first thing we're being thoughtful of are the needs of the students. So we think we're going to have more needs than we have right now. And so we're thinking we're going to need staff. We're going to need a place to house it and a process. We're trying to be thoughtful of the needs of our staff. We're trying to be thoughtful of the needs of our administrators who are going to be overseeing these things, and trying to what if within reason. You heard me earlier talk about this online registration. We've pushed out postcards, which should be arriving in mailboxes, I think yesterday or today. We are putting the information out that it opens January 15th, and we're trying to get people to realize the sooner that you register, the faster we're able to start to gain a better understanding of what our needs going to be. So that's kind of an update on the overall of a potential collaboration 4K wise with Encompass. But I want to do again that bottom line up front. We appreciate the Encompass Child Care Group coming to O'Connell Falls. We want to work with them in a collaborative way to help them to flourish in our community and also sustain in our community, because we know that childcare has been a significant need for years. So we appreciate the effort that they're involved in. They're committed to this collaboration. If you've driven by the site over there across from the City Hall, you can see they're already working on the building and getting that up and ready. And their goal right now is to be open on June 10th. So shortly after our school year ends, so they can start providing some care options for students. Any questions on any of that?
So the current Kid Station staff, have they been notified that the plan would be to,
We haven't because you all haven't taken action on it yet.
okay,
So
so they're learning something
once,
tonight?
yep, once you potentially take action, then we can start continuing to move forward. But one of the things that's important to note, I don't see an issue here where we're concerned about somebody losing a job and not being able to find employment. Because right now in our school district, if we were to not have Kid Station at O'Connell Falls Elementary, we absolutely are going to have other jobs available within our district. We are regularly posting support staff type positions. Would it be an exact position from what they were in? No, because we're saying that the only place we'll have Kid Station will be down in Abrams. However, we do have paraprofessional positions, we do have custodian positions, we have opportunities, so.
I think this is exciting opportunity for us, both from the standpoint of meeting childcare needs in the community. But to kind of reiterate one of the points Dean made early in his presentation, in the past, as we kind of analyzed and looked at open enrollment, usually the issue was that people that live in our district, families that live in our district, were sending their kids, their 4K or younger kids to other districts. And for a number of reasons, number of factors, but one of the reasons was because some of those, like Pulaski and I think Bayport too, we're offering 4K in daycare. So I can see that as a real potential, as Dean pointed out, for encouraging additional families to enroll with us.
Just to add on to that, a question, you might not have an answer for this, but will that impact our open enrollment caps, specifically Terry? Maybe you'll talk about it later, but the special education, I know we're limited on space for open enrollment. So how, by adding possible 0.5 to 1 FTE, does that possibly shift our numbers for next year in that regard?
I don't see it shifting what Terry's going to talk about. Terry's going to talk to you about not having enrollment caps on regular ed,
right,
but still having enrollment caps on special ed. And the reasoning behind that.
Open enrollment caps, you're saying?
Yes,
Open enrollment
I'm sorry.
caps on special ed. Yeah, that was going to be that was my question.
Let me restate that. Open enrollment caps on special ed, not on regular ed. And the reasoning behind that is because the current pupil to teacher ratios that we have, and there's not room. And so ultimately, in order to affect that, we would have to hire more special education staff, which is really difficult to do. Right now, it's been a challenge to sustain the staffing, levels of staffing that we have. So I don't see this changing that. So if you had somebody that said, hey, I want to come in, but my child has special needs, we would then still have to address that the same way we do potentially if you take action as you've done the last few years, where we would say to them, you're not able to open enroll into the district if your child has special needs. Right. And then it's up to that parent. In some cases, the parents have actually then moved into the district, at which point they are looking at it. Any other questions on that?
I don't know if this answers it, Emily, but our early childhood program, working with our 3-year-olds, we've already started talking with Encompass as to how we can, with our kids that are in the district that we serve that are 3-year-olds with disabilities, how Encompass can help us, how we can partner with them to provide an inclusive setting to service students. Because right now we utilize St. Anthony's Preschool as a setting. We use Oconto's Head Start. So our staff is at times going over to Oconto, and then we're starting, we looked at a daycare in Gillette. Like, we don't have an inclusive setting for our in-district kids. So we're excited to, and already have talked with Encompass about how, that doesn't answer or doesn't change the open enrollment caps, but it will help our kids who are age 3 with some inclusive settings that we can provide the special ed services.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I guess I'll end with is my appreciation for all the people's time and effort to get to where we are. And what I know is going to be a lot of time and effort between now and implementation. And it's daunting. And so those folks have been involved in all of this over and above the normal overwhelming tasks that they have as part of their roles. So that's the staff members, that's the administrators, that's the folks at Encompass. So they're doing a lot of building of what doesn't currently exist. So kudos.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the end of the district administrator's report. You all good? Okay. Move on to old business. First up, donations.
Asking the board to consider accepting the donations and a public thank you for all the folks that have been donors for the causes that you can see up there on the screen.
I make a motion to accept the donations.
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Sarah. Any other discussion?
I want to say thank you for everybody that donates all the time. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Very, very much appreciated. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, capital referendum update.
So I had shared with you some information that Nexus shared with me. As you can see, it shows both pictures as well as some data on the side. During the last month, they've been primarily involved with the work of both excavation and foundation and backfilling. They're about 80% complete with that. They're starting to be involved in the walls. You see from the road, that lower right-hand corner picture, some vertical movement. Part of that down on the southeast corner of the project is the tech ed area. Those are going to be the inside walls of the tech ed. And then you'll also start to see some for the elevator shaft that they started working on just the other day. And also, I've mentioned this in a previous one. If you roll to the next slide, we've appreciated their willingness to share the unneeded concrete from different loads. So if you've ever been involved in a project, it's not uncommon that when they get done pouring, you might have some leftover in the truck. Quite often they ask where do you want those tailings to go to, and they just put them off in the ditch somewhere or part that you end up having to clean up later. This is awesome because they bring it over, and we've been making concrete benches in our tech ed area. See the lower right-hand corner as an example of the finished product. So they look really nice, and the beauty of it is you don't have to worry about them getting legs because you're going to need about 18 people to pick one of those up and move it. We really appreciate the young people with Mr. Heisel's group, as well as Mr. Heisel's oversight and collaboration on this. Much appreciated. And then the next slide kind of gives you a little bit of what's next. So they are expecting the structural steel is going to start coming into the project area here in the next couple of weeks. And then in February, they're going to start to see the erection of that steel. Along with precast concrete walls will be going up in February, and that's in the location of the gym area. And then the brick veneer and the metal wall panels will be able to see a mock-up of what that looks like and do an approval process of that before it goes any further. So the neat part is we have our project going on, but if you've been paying attention to what's happening over at the firehouse, they're probably about 10 or 12 months in front of our project. So you can see how the veneer brick is going up there and how that looks. And you saw the metal being erected here 6 months ago. And so it's pretty exciting to see their project and know what's coming here with ours. The weather, knock on wood, has been wonderful this fall. The fall that kept on going into 50-degree weather in December. But unfortunately, based on my weather briefings I was involved in this morning, that's coming to an end. So it sounds like this next week, Tuesday, it's going to be struggling to get out of single digits. And they're saying probably struggling to get out of single digits for about a 2-week period. So they'll continue moving forward on the project. It's just going to be not quite pleasant conditions. Any questions on that up to this point?
in the mock-up, they're actually gonna put up a panel or something with.
Yeah, they actually, so rather than having to make it's kind of like when you think about, you have to go to the hardware store and pick paint from a little bitty paint chip. They've actually brought like a small 6x6 panel to get a better idea of what does that brick look like, or what does that wall look like. Which is
6 feet long.
which is nice.
6 feet long by 6 feet
Oh, yeah.
high, and then they just do what it's in. Look like.
Gives you a lot better understanding. I don't know if you've ever, where you get the paint and you actually put it up on the wall and you're like, okay, that doesn't look anything like chip on the hand. This is a better cake than that. The other thing, just a heads up, I spoke with Nexus. They're planning to be here to brief you in person in February, because you're looking at multiple things. We talked ahead of time about the potential of bringing you bids for the roof project. We're also looking at a lot of activity then. You're going to start to see it in February, but then there's going to be a lot more for them talking about what's coming in March. So looking forward to that.
Okay. All right. Next up, policy revisions. Or did we have any, was there any change order? We went through that last one.
Yes.
Sorry.
My bad. Thank you. So there's 3 change orders. 2 of them cost us money and 1 of them brought money back in. So let's start with the nice one first. The one that brought money back in was $1,387, and the architect determined that a vapor barrier that had been written into the plan was not needed in the area of the fitness center. Then there was 2. One of them was $1,188. That's an upgrade to the battery packs for solar crosswalks. So part of this planning process was being thoughtful of the speed along what's currently County I, and trying to have 2 lights on both sides of south and north of the entrances and exits. And those are going to be solar. And one of the things that came up when they pushed it forward for approval was they were told that it needed to be a different coated battery or an upgraded battery pack that had a greater capacity. And so it cost more.
Is that going to be, those going to be like what's over by Washington School, Union Street, I think it is?
I'm not sure what's over
It's
there, so
it's
talk intelligently.
a flashing, well, it's like the one out here, shows your speed and got flashing lights.
No, I think it'll actually be more significant than that. It's my understanding it's going to be like a yellow flashing light to try to get people to recognize that during certain times of the day, you're going to have traffic coming in and out of those driveways. So this is just one piece to that, but just so the board's aware, I fully anticipate we're going to have to continue this conversation relative to that stretch of Highway I, because in initial conversations, how can I say this thoughtfully? I don't feel like we were met with a lot of support when we talked about bringing that mile-per-hour speed limit down. And so I fully anticipate it's going to be a further conversation, because there's some process that they normally would go through to say how many driveways are on a certain stretch, and dependent on the amount of driveways, depends on what speed you can bring it down to. And we didn't meet that at this point. In my world, I understand, but for any rule, I would always think that there's a potential exception in a thoughtful scenario. And if we're bringing kids in and out of that, some of whom may be on bicycles or crossing at crosswalks, I would like to think that that would be something to be thoughtful of. So this is one of the things we're instituting to try to mitigate, but I anticipate we're going to have further conversation where we need some help in mitigating risk and being thoughtful.
Is that controlled by the county highway department and the DOT?
Well, it's interesting because we've had multiple conversations and not really sure who wants to take credit for who gets to make that decision. And if we can't figure that out, then maybe I'm hoping we can make the decision. So we can always hire our technology department to make some signs of what we want the mile/hour speed limit. I'm just not sure that we could actually enforce that. So,
Isn't there some sort of like law that it's in a school zone and it's like 15 miles per hour no matter what if you're in a school zone?
well, we're gonna have to continue pushing that envelope a little bit, because,
Is that not like
well, the
part of
school
legislature?
zone, so technically the school zone doesn't exist right now. So I don't think I can push it right now, but once the school begins to exist, then I think that we'll have a little bit more capability there.
Yeah.
So I only mention that because up to this point, I haven't been able to get a lot of traction on that, but I don't think it's an unreasonable request. And so as we push more, I think that we'll get there. I think that will prevail. So that was that one. The last one then is a power loading dock. So when we were initially trying to ensure that, if you think back, trying to get my dates right, I think it was about October, November that we got the bids back and we determined that we were within budget. But prior to that, our design team spent months trying to figure out how we were going to come in under budget. And so one of the things that we had been a cost saving measure was doing a manual dock. And after we took a look at that, we asked them to make that not a manual dock so that you'll be able to walk up and you'll be able to punch in what height you want that dock to be at, depending on what truck is coming up. So it gives us a greater level of latitude and usability. So we asked for that change. They gave us the change, but there's a cost to it. So those are the 3 change requests. Any questions on any of those? Good.
You don't need to approve any of those? No motion needed?
No action needed. Below the dollar amount. Okay. That it on the updates?
Yep.
Okay. Move on to the policy revisions.
So we pulled one of the policies from that group last time, 32-2, and that was 7250.01, memorials for staff and students. And then we also included in your packet the current policy 7250, commemoration of school facilities. Say that twice fast. And then I also provided you with a copy of an example of a policy from another district, naming and renaming school facilities and commemoration of dedications. So you don't have to take any action tonight, but we're asking you to take a look at this. If I started with 7250.01, one of the first things that you have an option for is, you can see in the 3rd paragraph, it talks about what the board does not normally support, and then what they support, and they say memorials are permissible only after it's approved by, and then you can choose whether it's approved by you or a district administrator or someone else. My recommendation would be that that would rest with you, the board. Mm-hmm. That's something that would be brought to you if you were going to make an exception of the proposal. And then underneath there, in the last paragraph, it talks about when the death is related to a suicide. It gives examples of things that you would be thoughtful for, potential actions to be life affirming and somehow encouraging. That's up to you whether or not you would select that. I would think it might be something you'd want to consider because it just gives you a little bit more information to consider. We hope that you never experienced that, but our district, we have experienced it in the past. And if we have something like this, then it gives us something else to think about. Mm-hmm. So that's one example of what you can consider for policy 7250.01. The other piece underneath 7250 is just the fact that, it gives you feedback right now of how we're currently acting under policy, which is pretty specific in the first 3 lines of that policy, but then it gets into making a decision if it's for the well-being of the district, community, state, or nation, which I just wrote a note on there. It's relatively vague, which the good news of vagueness is it allows you options. The last piece that you had was the policy from the other school district. And one of the things that I just put a note is that in the beginning, when it talks about naming or renaming facilities, pretty similar to what our school district has. However, one of the things that it contains is a little bit more information as to how somebody would make a request. And we don't necessarily have that in what we currently have. So if that would be something that you want added into ours, we could potentially put something together and bring that back to you. Other than that, I'll open it up to you.
Well, we had talked about some of the issues with naming facilities primarily, and how that so sometimes can create problems. I like the fact that it talks about memorials being, some type of an activity. Example I think of right away is the Bethany Wreath blood drive that's been going on for how many years, and just keeps going, keeps getting bigger. As a matter of fact, that I think that's the way to go. And even though we've had some, and this is pointed out all the time, when someone has an idea that they want to, advocate for someone to have a facility or part of a facility or something named for someone that's had some impact on the district. I think the fact that the third paragraph there in the new policy, generally the board does not support permanent memorials, may help to take care of some of that, but still kind of leaves the door open with a crack, and which maybe is all right, but I like this. I like this policy.
The 7250.01.
Yes.
Yeah, it provides you a little bit more specific latitude in saying that it is permissible if it comes through whoever you decide.
I kind of like 7250.01, but I like the guidelines of how you request it
Right.
from the
I was gonna
other.
say, that
Pretty
could
much
be
just like
added,
you
yeah.
said, like if you could just kind of like take that little requesting portion and put that in there, just a little click.
Copy paste.
Well, I mean, we're a little bit more high class than that, but
Retype.
Kind of falls eyes it.
Yeah. Other thoughts or comments?
I do also like including the comment at the end of 5001 about the death by suicide. I think it just gives a little clarity on the district's stance on how someone could be memorialized or remembered. I'm trying to see a reason why we wouldn't want to include that, and it doesn't come to me. So I would think that could be added as well.
Yeah, and just add, I think your comment of, I think clearly that that third paragraph in 250.01 where it talks about the who, that would be approved by the board. I think that clearly. So what's the next step, I guess, given our feedback?
So based on your feedback, we can take that and, what do you say?
Yeah,
With
just like that.
that paragraph in regards to the how to do a request. We can take a how-to paragraph and we can add that into 7250.01 and then bring that back to you for February for your review. One thing that I don't fully understand, if you, in that third paragraph, if we were to check approved by the board, that's the end of that option.
Yep.
They then have a second option. It says the district or the administrator shall inform the board of all such approved permanent memorials. I guess I personally don't, if we've already come to you, the board, to say, you know, you have a request through this entity and you approved it, then to turn around and say that I should come back and tell you, hey, we have this.
Yeah.
Seems redundant.
So we'll match
Sentence
that
could be
part.
deleted.
Yeah.
Scratch that.
I didn't think that that would be needed unless we decided that the district admin would be the one that would.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Okay. So
Why
then,
make a noise for an eraser?
And a erase.
Clerk does that.
yeah, we'll take that one over there. So then I'll make those changes as you guided and then bring that back to you in February.
So no action needed right now.
No action. Okay, thank you. All right, next up, actions to address vaping.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Well, I know that we're all a little bummed about the weather, but I know our ice fishing team has just wrapped up their meeting, so I think they're pretty tired.
They've not been out in the ice yet.
They've been waiting for a long time.
You
don't want to start first, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, for 2 weeks out there were too cold weather.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so I was here on December 6th, and at that time, we had talked a little bit about culture cash and some of the things that, some concerns were brought up, or just questions about that. So I was assigned to go back and kind of come up with some alternatives and present them to the board. So earlier last week, on Thursday, Ann Bannicky, who is our student council advisor, she helped to organize kind of a group of student leaders in our building. And Danny had a chance to sit down with those students and just talk to them about some of the things that we've been talking about at the board level that carried over from last spring into summer, and just get their thoughts and their perception a little bit on some of the things that we're dealing with regards to student vaping. So first off, I just want to share some takeaways from that conversation. First thing is that our students thought that they understood that there was vaping that does occur on school grounds, but they feel like it definitely has improved tremendously in their eyes from years past. So they saw a pretty what they feel is less students participating on school grounds than maybe some of our juniors and seniors experienced when they were freshmen and sophomores. The other thing that they talked about, we asked them what our reputation, kind of what they feel, and they don't feel like we are any, we're viewed negatively by other districts, or that we're perceived as a hotbed for this issue. They said that, and some students indicated that they felt it was much worse in other buildings, in other districts, I should say. They did indicate that, we talked about the whole culture cash thing and topics about reporting, and even with those students that, our leaders, they indicated that is a challenge, right? And a school district our size is just very easy to, that people find stuff out, you know what I mean? So there's that constant fear there. And they also felt like there would be that a program like that would lead to people maybe trying to get retribution on somebody else. So they felt that could be problematic. We talked a little bit about vape detectors, and they said, they understood that could be a solution, but they also felt that could become very problematic, especially if they were in a group of people in the bathroom and they were constantly brought in because there's 6 kids in here, sensors go off, now I'm getting searched, I'm not in class, and there's issues with that, and that can lead to some frustration. And I think one of the biggest takeaway for me was they said, they understood that addressing vaping at school with disciplinary action was only a portion of the solution, right? And so really insightful from them, they said, they felt that ultimately, like that, there needed to be more avenues to help students with nicotine cessation as part of our plan. So based on our conversations with the leadership, based on our past conversations with the board, and just the work of the bid committee over the summer, our team, our administrative team, is going to move forward with the following actions. So we are going to be implementing an electronic hall monitoring system. We really feel that strongly that will help us when it comes to controlling and monitoring and setting parameters around school or around students in the hallway. We feel that there's a number of students who are currently utilizing that hallway space. We have a pass system that's paper at the high school level. And we think, there are some kids that might have multiples of those. So we think this can really help us when it comes to addressing those issues that come up. The other thing that we want to do is we want to explore and promote cessation tools for students who are currently addicted to nicotine and trying to find ways to quit. I looked at our YRBS data that we had conducted last year, and we were at about 17%, a little over 17% of our students who admitted to currently vaping within the last 30 days. And of that group of students, there was over 40% that said that they tried to quit. So obviously our students, they get hooked on it. Nicotine, we know, is a really addictive drug. And so we want to make sure that we provide avenues for those students and trying to do so in a way that is confidential for them as well, so that they're not feeling they're going to get in trouble. We are going to continue to work on a healthy school culture where students feel valued as stakeholders. They're not intimidated to report when members of our school community are making poor choices that negatively impact themselves and others. And I think we have a lot of work to do there. That's not going to be done overnight. And so we have to continue to chip away at that. That might be, that's a long-term goal, but it's something that I think is worth pursuing. And then we need to continue to monitor our YRBS data and also identify, looking at our discipline data to identify issues surrounding vaping, see if we are on an uptick or downtick, and then take those next steps. In our mind, which would be coming back to you, looking at, do we need to do something more? So that's the update that I have for you. Questions?
I just have a comment. I love it that you got the students involved,
Yeah.
leadership involved. I think that is the voice of the student body, obviously, and I think that I appreciate that data significantly. So that's
They're very, very thoughtful. A lot of great conversations. It's fun talking to young adults because it's just exciting to see the quality of students that we have. So.
I agree with Gary's comments, and would add that these are obviously the kids that are kind of as leaders, student leaders in the school that others are going to look up to. So that could be a group that could be influencing these kids, to not do vaping to the extent they can, and with the other programs that we have that we can get involved in for those that are addicted and want to get off. That could help. The other comment I have is in relation to the process that you used. One of the things I gained quite a number of years ago by attending the convention was a couple of schools that had a program or discussed, student involvement, and I suggested that we try that here. And I was thinking that could include our board representatives, student board representatives. Well, it hasn't gone the way that I was thinking it could or would. But maybe I think the process that you use is even better to bring together groups of student leaders and have the kind of conversations you were able to have with them. Those kids at the high school level particularly can, if you want to know what's going on in the school, you talk to them
right.
rather than us trying to guess what's going on. So I like that and encourage you to continue that kind of a process to get student input on issues that affect them directly.
And just to note too, our 2 representatives were on that committee.
Sure.
So, yep.
Was it mostly upperclassmen?
Primarily, there was kind of a mix, but it was mostly upperclassmen. That's who was usually on some of our executive leadership groups that we have. Yeah. So to get their insight.
Do you have, probably don't have like a plan, but I guess like thoughts about like, cessation tools and like what that might look like or who you might involve in that? I know we've talked to like health teachers, but I'm even thinking like, this has a lot of crossover with mental health. So even, counselors or even people services, or, you know, what your thoughts are on that.
So that's an ongoing thing, right? So the short answer is I don't have it all laid out yet. And we're kind of in the developing stages of that, but I think the county, has at least some resources. And then I think the other big thing is too, just making sure that it's if you've gone in our school lately, you'll see that we have, Mr. Soleric has some anti-vaping posters that are around. And I know we have stuff posted even in the bathroom about speak up, speak out. But I think just awareness is going to be the #1 tool for our kids. And then we talked about utilizing our student services and trying to make sure it's confidential for our kids, so that way they don't feel like, because the #1 thing that they're worried about, right, is that they're going to get in trouble if they come forward. So, and we have to kind of play that. That's kind of a slippery slope to it. We have to be mindful of that as well if somebody's breaking the law. But I think ultimately we want to try to give them an opportunity to seek that help as they need it, and then just making sure that's broadcasted for them. So the county was our first stop. So if anybody has any other tools, I'm open to any suggestions, because I think it's a need for our kids. And then again, based off that data, we know we have a lot of students that are looking to stop.
So then as far as district, so this is a plan for the high school. Do we plan on bringing the middle school team in to kind of collaborate with them too on a?
I think right now this is our first step.
Okay.
And because this is where we've identified that there's the challenge. Not saying that there isn't at middle school, but I think right now the goal is to see how this rolls and then try to learn from that as we potentially take the next step. So 6-8 has been involved in the conversations. They're not involved in the action step yet. So.
And what's the goal for implementing the Smart Pass, like next year or?
So Danny has taken the lead on that. He's done a great job. So the first step is we're finalizing things with our tech team to make sure that we're all set to go. So, and that was, Danny has been working through that. We have members of our ITL team have said that they would like to help. Those 3 team members, as well as some other teachers. Danny's going to look at it, trying to help pilot it. I shouldn't say pilot, to get started in their classrooms. Because it's not a pilot, we're moving forward with it. And then we just talked about that today, and we're looking like second semester to start as soon as we get that okay from the tech team. And my hope would be that by mid-February, that is fully in swing. So it seems to be very cut and dry. It links up with our class link, and there's a couple of different ways you can look about doing something like this. We know we're going to go forward with it, so we try to help work with a couple of people to kind of get out some of those kinks, or find some of those massive issues that we may potentially have. But ultimately, I think it might be one of those deals where we get it going and we kind of figure it out as, we're not going to know all those pitfalls until we fully implement it. So I think the sooner the better. And I look at it as a change up for our kids. I mean, they're doing the paper passes. It's just going to go electronic. And again, I think it's going to do a lot for us as far as giving us information on situations that are happening where there might be a student that is continually leaving class, right? And so we can identify that and figure out what needs they might have. Because it might not just be, I don't see this as just a vaping thing. I see this as it could be mental health. It could be something medically that the students may not aware of, but it'll give us some really good insights as to what's going on as far as movement in the hallways.
So as far as goals, have you identified, what you will use to measure goals? Is it YRBS data?
Right now, the way it sits, it's our YRBS data, and then we'll continue to monitor our numbers of incidents.
Okay.
And then obviously, I think just the biggest thing is continue to communicate with our kids and our teachers, and if we feel like there's more concerns that are brought forward, then we're gonna, be more aggressive with maybe alternative ways that we would need to do some surveying and identifying the problem.
Just listening to kind of Carrie's questions there. I mean, do we think it's prudent to maybe get kind of an update in the May timeframe or June and just say, okay, how'd the past system work? What else are you getting for feedback? Have you seen incidents change?
I think that a full semester of doing this would be a good time frame for us to get an idea of, have a really good handle on how those things are implemented.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe not in May because you're doing a lot for graduation.
I'd appreciate if we could wait till June.
June or July when things are kind of, and you can get your head wrapped around everything that got worked on and that would be great.
And it gives time to implement something else.
Right.
I think it would be nice for us to hear too, like just kind of like a temperature on how many kids we're seeing, in the halls or in the bathrooms that are vaping.
This one is to tell us who is. So what we'll be able to identify is if there is problems, and we know that kids are in the hallways, we can prevent students. Sarah and Emily can't go to the bathroom at the same time. That's one of the things this allows us to do.
Right.
Control, right? So I don't.
I guess what I'm saying is like maybe if like consistently you're catching like 2 or 3 kids a month. Like in May, is it 1?
Yeah.
Or is it none?
Right.
So, something along those lines, like kind of like you said, like keeping a tab on numbers, how it's going. I don't need like super details, but
yeah.
And I'll work with Dan to get those numbers as far as our discipline data. We can definitely find that down.
So I'm gonna suggest that be like a July discussion.
That would be
Because
great.
June means that on May 15th, he's gonna have to be trying to pull all that together.
Oh, yeah.
July makes sense.
That's ugly.
Just that way we have it before going into next year.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
Sounds
cool.
good.
Thank you for
All
your
right.
work on this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a good plan.
Yes.
Okay.
So
New
no
bus-
action. Sorry.
No action. Yeah. New business, WASB resolutions.
So I shared with you some food for thought as it related to the resolutions. So in a nutshell, each year, the resolutions are something that is discussed at the state convention. Each school district is asked to have a delegate to represent your Board of Education. So Emily has willingly volunteered to do that for your all's board. One of the things that we're trying to give you an opportunity to do is have discussion at whatever level to try to give her some thoughts. So the feedback that I gave you was, I thought for the most part, these resolutions make sense to me. There was a couple things that I just gave a comment that you may or may not find helpful. And at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you, in your feedback for the 2404, the special ed general policy, you gave some information about how like things have kind of gone back and forth over the last 30 years. Can you give a little bit more sustenance to that?
Yeah, and I'm going to be purposely vague because obviously I don't want to bring anything up and have it be an issue of lack of professionalism on my part. But there's been a pendulum that swings back and forth on this topic where for the folks in the audience and that might be watching, the resolution, it talks about best practice of inclusion of children with disabilities in the general education environment, and that all children with disabilities deserve access to the general education environment to the greatest extent possible. And so my comment on that is I agree with that. However, it's a vague statement, and with the vagueness of the statement, it has the ability to be taken too far to a level that is not necessarily, I'm giving you my opinion, that isn't necessarily reasonable. So the job of the IEP team is to try to come up with a plan that they feel meets the child's needs in the least restrictive environment. And I'm looking out there to Terry, so if I get sideways, please jump in as our special ed director. But we run into challenges sometimes where we don't get consensus amongst the IEP team. You can have a situation where somebody feels that the child should be in the regular ed environment all the time, regardless of their disability, regardless of what the team thinks is in the best interest of the child. They just look at it as it's kind of their mantra that every kid should be in that environment. And I can absolutely, without reservation, say that I've observed situations where that was not in the best interest of the child with the disability, because they had specific needs and they were absolutely not being successful in that general education environment. And we could have helped that child more readily in a different environment. And so I think that every situation needs to be taken with the merit of the situation that you're encountering, and that group of people needs to have that conversation. And that's why the IEP team has special folks that are part of that group. They have special ed background, they have regular ed background, specialist background, the parents, to try to understand those needs of the child and then try to make a plan. So I'm always concerned when we try to write legislation to make a one size fits all. And I really struggle with that. In my mind, it really has to come back to the IEP team. And the legislation, when I say it flip-flops back and forth, is kind of the determination of who has the authority. In some cases in my career, the IEP team had the authority, and then some it was the parents that had the authority regardless of the IEP team. And I understand the reason why it goes back and forth. Quite often, when there's been a situation where someone has been wronged, it tends to go into court cases and there's legal outcomes, and those legal outcomes then result in new legislation. It's unfortunate because, again, we paint the whole wall with one small brush from one situation. So that's why I put the note in there, just because I guess my thought was for the board to think about, when Emily is involved in those discussions, I don't know what the level of experience in that room will be. And so I just know that there's a lot of folks in education that are doing their very best to try to meet the needs of that child and recognizing what they can do to do that. And I really, if we can empower those people, I would appreciate that personally.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was helpful for me to understand.
Any other feedback from anybody on either the resolutions as written or some of the feedback that Dean, I appreciate the feedback recommendations you came back with. I thought they were well placed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree with what Clint just said.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that was real controversial or that needed, sometimes, some years there are, but so I guess
Do we
don't have to take any action.
don't think we need any action.
If that's the case, I'm not.
We will leave it
Somebody
in.
has an issue yet.
I would look to Emily to ask, do you feel like you need anything else from the board?
No, as long as the board is in agreement with Dean's feedback and that there's nothing else in any of the resolutions that you guys completely disagree with that you want to make sure that I think about.
Raise an issue with that.
But no, I don't think so. I know they sent a little warning to us because I'm not sure if anyone here was a delegate from last year, but it sounds like it went a little sideways.
Yeah, I don't think we had, I went, but I was not able to attend that portion due to a work constraint at the time. But yeah, it had gone, I'd read some of the details on it, and it had gone a little bit, it got a little bit sideways. So
Yeah.
I think they're trying to avoid that this year.
Right, they're trying to, this isn't about wordsmithing, and it's not necessarily about, the rationale doesn't go into the resolution, it's just the resolution itself. So you may not necessarily agree with the rationale, but if you, for the most part, agree with the resolution, then, we move forward. Everyone has been saying, there isn't anything too polarizing, I think, in these resolutions. So I feel pretty confident that I can represent the district.
Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
I'll let you know how it goes next month.
I'm sure it'll be somebody else's turn.
Yes.
You make the physical side yourself.
Oh, yeah.
On to the next, the 24-25 open enrollment space allocation. Hi, Terry.
Michigan's winning, just in case anyone.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
I wore my blue, I wanted to throw my sweatshirt on, but I didn't. 'Cause I know I had to.
Thanks for the update.
17-3.
Oh,
Thanks.
I can sit in the crowd. So I'm here every year in January. I come in and I share with you information about caps on open enrollment. We've never had caps on our regular education spaces, so that's kind of just a continued recommendation in terms of any students that open enroll in another district, that we would accept them if they did not have special education needs. So that's kind of the same, and kind of our practice and hope to continue to grow our numbers. So the remainder of the report that I have addresses the special education services, as that is an area that we can cap in different areas. We can't cap based on disability area. We can't cap like because you have autism, you can't come in. The way that we cap is based on our services and within different grade bands or different grade levels. So that's the report that I have that I will go through. Essentially, when we're looking at what is a cap, we look at our capacity. So that is how many FTEs we have in that service area, in that grade level. And then we look at our projected enrollment. So our projected enrollment includes all of the kids that we have identified at this time. And then I also work with our teams on any projected referrals that might be coming through. We have kids that drop off, kids that move out. It's kind of one of those data points that we do the best that we can with the information that we have. Our capacity is pretty well set. It's that projected enrollment that, is kind of a number that we've always been kind of working off in that capacity. The way that we develop our capacity is essentially we look at kind of what are the DPI recommendations. DPI is finally doing some work around this in terms of what is a caseload number. A caseload number is, you say you're a cross-categorical special ed teacher, so you work with kids with a variety of disability areas. You would have 12 kids on your caseload if you were elementary. There isn't any guidance from DPI that says that you should have your caseloads at elementary at this level. You should, or anything. Essentially from 1992 is the most recent guidance that we've worked on. So we really worked on what practices have we used in the district that have worked. We look at, the services that we offer and kind of how effective they are with the caseload numbers that we have for our staff.
So those caseload limits are guidelines rather than
Yes.
our numbers.
Yes. And I don't anticipate the work that DPI is doing around this to actually give us anything concrete. Because it really is a local, your local school districts are the ones that really develop the programming and determine kind of with the needs of the students that you have in your district. Mm-hmm. So any questions about caseloads, capacity, projected enrollment? Okay. So I'm just going to start going through the report. Early childhood services are services for our 3-year-olds and our students who could be aged 4 but not enrolled in a 4K program. And we have one FTE identified for our early childhood services district-wide, so they would service OFPS students, OFPS area students and Abrams area students. That person would also, this year and projected for next year, would cover any 4K students at Abrams Elementary School. So in that FTE, that Abrams 4K, this is where this individual would be able to work with Encompass with some of our students. Many years ago, we had what was called a self-contained early childhood program where students would come in to the school. We'd have, six students in the morning, maybe 6 students in the afternoon, or somewhere around there. They would come and receive services in a preschool program, but that is not an inclusive setting. That is actually a really restrictive setting because it was just students with disabilities. It wasn't students, typically developing students. And at that age especially, they really learn from peers. They really learn, any student, okay, Pam's here, she's okay. So any student, whether they have a disability or not, that group of peers is so important. And DPI had been pushing early childhood programs to be more inclusive. So we've responded to that. In this community, it's been difficult because we have no childcare here. So we have staff going into homes. We have staff going to the public library. We have staff going into St. Anthony's private school. They've been great working with their preschool program. Like I said, we've got Oconto, and then this year we're also working with a daycare in Gillette to try to service some students in inclusive settings. So Encompass coming will be, we already kind of have a meeting date set for them, and they're all ready to go with those 3 and 4-year-olds. So we can, instead of talking to the daycare in Gillette and having students possibly go, not to Gillette schools, but to that daycare, they're going to be able to go stay right, no hotspots. So, which we haven't had. So next project, next 10 years, hopefully we have Head Start, right? Al? 10 years, 5 years. I know. I was thinking we have it by now. But yeah, Head Start is another program that we really, have been trying to partner with, but they at least have a partner. They have a program in Oconto that we can utilize. So, but our capacity is 12, and our projected enrollment is 12, if not a little bit more. This one is always hard, just like 4K numbers or early childhood numbers. We don't have those students. We don't have eyes on these students, so it's hard to know. But I don't anticipate it being any less than 12, probably more, if anything. So leaving us no spaces for our early childhood students. The next box is our 5K through 5th grade at Abrams. Right now, we've got 1 FTE identified to support our students with disabilities at Abrams. Next year, we're projected to have about 15 students. So been working with Joanne and the staff at Abrams right now because their numbers are really high. Elementary caseloads around 12 is really good. As you know, 12 students across 5 different grade levels can be quite a challenge. So our special ed teacher there is doing some great work, but we have to make sure that our numbers at Abrams aren't getting too high. So trying to figure out what we need to do with our FTEs that we currently have and students that we currently have within the district that we can program. So at Abrams, it's gonna be pretty tight next year, similar to this year. So we wouldn't have any spaces for students at Abrams. If we did have a student who was open enrolled, that was an Abrams area student and wanted to come to O'Connell Falls Elementary, there would be that possibility if we had space at O'Connell Falls Elementary. But the next section is O'Connell Falls Elementary, and you'll see that we've got 1 FTE that does 4K and 5K, so she's got a caseload limit of 12. It looks like we're gonna have 13 or more 4K or 5Kers next year with disabilities. So we wouldn't be able to accept any students at that level. 1st through 5th grade, CC is cross-categorical. So those are services for a wide variety of disability areas, typically students who are in the classroom 80% or more of their day in the regular ed classroom. So again, we're projected to have 65. So our numbers are high there as well, which isn't uncommon. And then the other service area that we've always looked at with our CAPS and open enrollment is our what we call ID autism functional services. These would be students who may be in the regular classroom less than 80% of the time. It's hard to say because it's always individualized based on that IEP team, but those are the students that need, they're typically out of the regular ed classroom. Maybe, you know, they might go for 1 or 2 classes during the day, and then the rest of their services are just really highly individualized and really specialized because of their disability. So those caseload numbers are much smaller because of the needs of those students, being much higher. So at O'Connell Falls Elementary, we're projected to have 7 students in that, in those grade levels in that program, so that would cap us there. Moving on into grades 6 through 12, or 6 through 8, cross-categorical, we've got 4 special ed teachers at the middle school that provide the cross-categorical and the IB autism functional services. So those two areas of the table address the 4 FTEs that we have. We have a teacher that we kind of split between the cross-categorical and the IB autism because of our numbers. So next year we're projected to have 55 cross-categorical students and 4 students with IB autism services at the middle school. So that definitely caps us in terms of that grade band between 6 through 8 for all of our services. Same at the high school. We're projected to have 77 special ed students there in our cross-categorical type programming service and 12 in our IB autism services. And when you think about high school, we service some of those students, especially the ones who might be in the IB autism functional services. They may stay till they're age 21. So you may see students graduate. They may go through graduation, but they continue to receive services from us through age 21. So we're at 12 for those. So no cap, no spaces like we have the last several years for our students with cross-categorical or IB autism functional services, which again we've had for several years, and it's a tough conversation when you have a family that would move in or would want some services because, but I always try to explain to families that move here and then you'll be included in our right. And I think as a district, it's one mechanism that we have to try to control some of the costs that may come along with special education, because we know that we're not reimbursed by the state for the services. The general fund still supports a huge majority of the special ed programming that we have. Moving on to speech and language therapy services, early childhood services. Again, those are age 3 and 4 not attending school. That program is capped at 20, and we're expected to have 20. Again, this is another slippery area because we never know how many referrals we're going to get, but I don't anticipate it being less than 20, probably more than 20. And then our 4K through grade 12 speech services, we're projected to have about 145. So that puts us over our caseload that we like to have at 35. So we have to cap our speech language services. And then the final part of this report is addressing specialized services such as visual impairment service, hearing impairment services, OT services, or PT services. Those are services that are in contract with CISA individually per student. So we don't necessarily, like if a student were to come in with any of those types of services from another district, we could cap just because those are individually contracted services, not necessarily because of, we don't ever project our enrollment of PT or OT. It's basically like, this is what we have, this is what we're projected to have. We're going to cap it because then we're not adding to that CISA cost. Again, all of this is just for open enrolled students. This has nothing to do with costs that might come up regarding students who are our district residents for special ed services. We have lots of students who need OT and PT and visual impairment services, hearing impairment services, and when we evaluate and we determine what their needs are, we provide it as best we can in our district if they're district residents. So I would propose that we continue to have caps on all of our special ed services for all grade levels and all services.
Okay. Now, do we need to, are we only doing the special ed side, or are we also, as part of this, are we also like denoting whether or not we have a cap on our regular open enrollment?
No, the proposal is similar to what we've done in the past, which is no cap for regular education open enrollments, but caps on special education.
So ideally, we're looking for a motion that suggests both of those. One that we have availability or no cap on regular open ed. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay.
I think I say this every time you give this presentation, so I'm gonna be like a broken record and say it again. I appreciate everything that you do and your team in this area. So I appreciate all our educators in the district. But I do want to give you and your special education team just a big thank you for many reasons, and keep up the good work, and I always appreciate what you come with. So with that, I am going to make a motion to accept Terry's recommendation on no caps for regular education open enrollment, and also her proposal to put the caps on the special education side of it.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Brian, second by Carrie. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Terry, I just heard recently that, the state secretary or superintendent advocating for more, given the big pot of money the state has. Is there any indication that something might come of that this time around? That you're aware of?
You know, I'm not up to speed on anything that's coming, but what I do know is our numbers keep getting higher.
Yeah.
Some of our students continue to get greater and greater. So, you know,
On the talk shows and that point, that's the point she was making, that the costs are increasing and districts have to fund those out of, or the increasing costs out of our general revenue, and which means we can't do some other things that are pretty critical too. So
I can actually jump in on that. So the WASDA, which is the district administrators professional organization, usually tries to come up with 3 or 4 key areas that we want to try to push forward, and reimbursement of special education costs was one on the last budget. Obviously, we didn't get as far as we were hopeful for.
Yeah.
As you know, the governor actually put forth a significantly different reimbursement amount than what was actually passed later on. But I know that this will be something that will, or we're being told this is something that will continue into the next budget requests, because, and Terry, I don't know how accurate this is, but pretty close. I think that, they're saying it's around 30%. A year ago, I think it was actually, when they get to the end state, we get somewhere between 27, 28%. So it's about a quarter of the actual cost. So 3/4 of the cost then comes out of the district general fund. So I'm gonna look at Kim, and I think that that's over $2 million, correct?
Yeah.
So that's $2 million that, as you stated, Kim, is not able to be somehow reutilized. So if we could get folks to recognize these are our children, we need to educate them, and we have a lot of unfunded mandates. So there's things that we have to do as a school district by law, but the funding didn't come along with it. So then it goes on the taxpayers' shoulders to bear that. So that'll be a continued request for review.
Yeah, I think increased funding for like high cost. We can submit for high cost claims too, like if you have a student who is a high cost, but you get, if the cost is, 75,000 for that student, for that one student, you may get, 15,000 back. So I mean, even the high cost, if we're recognizing that there's a high cost, I mean, even within some of our individual student needs, that reimbursement rate, it's pretty sad. Pretty sad. And the other thing is if you know we need specialists. So if you have any young people that are going to school or people who are looking for a career change, we need speech therapists.
I'm sorry, can you say it louder?
Speech therapy, we need people going into speech therapy because we've got money to fund speech programming. But we've, you know, even within that, it's hard to find speech therapists, licensed speech therapists. So, yeah. Speech
It's right up there with
therapists,
bus
special
drivers.
education teachers. That's right.
That's speech therapist, bus driver. If any speech therapists that want to drive a bus, we train you that way too. Thanks, Jared.
Yes.
Thanks, Jared. All right, next up, high school personal finance requirement.
All right, back again. So I will try to be as brief as I can here. Normally, when we come forward with something regarding a graduation requirement change, it's usually time to let you guys chew on that, process that. On December 6th, the state of Wisconsin, Governor signed Assembly Bill 109, which is known as Act 60. If you've watched the news at all or happen to catch that, but what the act essentially does is it creates a graduation requirement that all students, starting with the class of 2028, which if my math is correct, is this year's 8th grade class, have to have a personal finance, have part of personal finance in the high school career. I'm coming before you with an adjustment to our, seeking an adjustment to our current graduation requirements. And it's timely because on Monday, next week, it was originally scheduled for tomorrow, but with this conversation tonight, I want to give us a little bit of time. Our process from a scheduling standpoint, just so you know, we start right now with scheduling for next school year. And part of that process is to make sure that we understand our section numbers, our staffing needs, that I can go to Dean and Kim and have a conversation regarding that in February. I have to have all my stuff ready to go by that point. So, so Act 60 is a requirement for personal finance. Since that passage of Act 60, Mrs. Kangas Heather reached out to DPI. They did not have as much information as they now have. They have a little more information on their website. And then we also had conversations with Nick Bowl and Tracy Tate regarding this and some of our options. And I included that with some of the write-up here that I sent to all of you. But a couple of key things. So I think our first option was that we thought, hey, the board, and really, I think, forward thinking, in 2021, I believe it was, that you created a requirement starting for the class of 2026, which is this year's sophomore group, that they would have to take a future ready course. Okay. And our first option was to see, would this future ready course meet this personal finance requirement? And the short answer is it doesn't. It doesn't quite have all of the different aspects of personal finance incorporated into the course that the act requires. So, like I said, Heather and I sat down and we talked to Nick and Tracy. This wasn't a conversation that we were all like on board gung ho. There's obviously some disappointment just with how things felt and understanding. I think we all came with an understanding of the direction that ultimately is going to lead to our recommendation for you tonight. All right. So we came forward, we looked at 3 different options to try to make this work. The first option was, could we create a requirement that would make both personal finance and the Future Ready course requirements for graduation at OFHS. And, you know, we see value in both courses. That was one of our pros. A con for that, though, was that we currently have 26 credits to graduate from our school, which is higher than any place I've worked at, which is not a bad thing, but it's a good thing that we have our students. We want them to take a lot of classes. When we went to the Future Ready requirement, we went from 11 electives that kids could take down to 10 and a half. And if we add another half of a credit, we're now going to take our students, they will have basically 10 elective credits for graduation that they'll be required to take to get to that 26. Now, they can get more credits, that's understandable, but there is concern that that would have a negative impact on some of our other classes, whether it's electives in the core areas or some of our other encore classes that we have, like even in the business classes, tech ed, ag. So that was one option that we looked at. The other thing I'll just say to kind of piggyback on that option is we also looked at the number of kids that have more than one study hall. And, you know, had we had a huge number of kids, when I say huge number, if we were like at 2/3 or 3/4 of our junior class were sitting there with 2 study halls, that would have been something that would have been viable, but the simple short answer is we don't have that. And moving forward, that's going to be an expectation that, and I think it already has been, but we're going to reemphasize that all kids need to have at least 7 credits every year, because we want them to take as many classes as they can, with the option to still have a study hall, right? The second option was that we would continue on with our future ready requirement, which is set right now the way it's written in our course description book. Future ready would be a course that we would offer as a mandatory course for all of this year's sophomores when they become juniors next year. All right. We could carry on with having future ready be the course for that all juniors take this coming year and the following year, and then transition over to personal finance the following year with the freshmen group that this year's 8th graders when they become juniors in high school. That would help us keep things status quo and move forward with that future ready course. But it would also potentially have some negative consequences on Tracy would be teaching that class for 2 years, and then she would go back to teaching her electives or more of her electives, I should say. And I think it could potentially negatively impact some of the classes that she has right now, because students she wouldn't be able to offer as many courses, and then we'd kind of be up in the air as far as hoping that kids would sign up and trying to make sure that, you know, all the good things that she has going, she might lose momentum on those things. All right. The third option is that we would adjust our graduation requirement starting with the class of 2026, which is this year's sophomore class. And that would, what we would do is we would take that future ready course and we would turn it from a mandatory class that kids would have to take, a requirement, to an elective class for juniors and seniors next year, and make personal finance the required course that all of the current sophomores moving forward, or moving on down, would have to take that as a half credit. I think that's the cleanest solution. And, you know, the one thing we would have to do is, if you take action tonight, is we'll have to obviously update things in our course description book, make sure we alert our parents and our families about that. And then also we have to look to see how many students as sophomores took personal finance this year, and just make sure that they know they essentially will gain another elective class next year because they won't have to take personal finance as juniors. So that was a lot of talking there. Our recommendation, and again, I want to thank Tracy, Nick, and Heather, and obviously we talked to Dean as well, just for taking the time to address this in a quick turnaround. And like I said, it's not something that is an easy conversation. People put a lot of thought and momentum into trying to get this future ready course going. We don't believe it's gone totally, but it is a change from what we were expecting. So there's obviously some disappointment, but it is our recommendation that we would ask the board to change that graduation requirement, move future ready to an elective course for juniors and seniors, and that all students starting with the class of 2026 would fulfill a personal finance half credit requirement, and that would be for their junior year of high school is when they would be taking that as a required course. And obviously, with the exception being this year's sophomore class, who took it this year as an elective.
Stuart met with, so he did a pre-review with the curriculum committee. We had that meeting and went over this. Sarah, as the chair, I don't know if you want to kind of give your view on the I guess how it was presented there, or I guess our thoughts and recommendations, or how we aligned with what
Yeah,
Mr. Russ just went over.
I think the consensus is that we would definitely agree that, option 3 is probably the best, but, my main concern was the loss of some of the valuable things that were being taught in that class, college readiness, job readiness, interviewing skills, resume writing, stuff like that. So, maybe can you speak to some of that, what we talked about, maybe what might happen with some of those topics?
Yeah, so for starters, it will still be an elective course, so kids can take it, but it is absolutely very valid because not every student will sign up for it, right? So one of the things we talked about was that we currently, prior to this year, we have our Panther Flex time, which is a half an hour every day. And going into this year, we made an adjustment. Last year, we would have a homeroom period twice a month. Whenever they had early release, we would do homeroom during that time. And this year, we've adjusted it to now the first day of every week. It's a Monday or Tuesday, whatever the case is, if we have a long weekend. That first day back in the week is always a homeroom period for our students. So part of that thought process is we have our ACP that we're doing with our students, academic and career planning, which is a big part of that future ready course. Our staff, our homeroom teachers, all of our staff will have, and virtually all staff have a homeroom. They go over academic checks on a weekly basis, try to help steer our students towards selecting, getting into a flex period if they need additional support. And then throughout the year, there are some ACP lessons that they do. So every student has like a brag sheet where they list their accomplishments so that they can be ready to write a resume. They have 4-year plans that they have in place. We recognize that with that, Tracy Tate and Melissa Plank are our 2 ACP coordinators for the high school. And when they made their plans, they made it thinking that the students would have this future ready course. So that is going to be something we're going to have to revisit, and something that we're going to have to do a couple of things. I think number one, look at how we utilize that Panther Flex if we have to take more time. Not saying that we're going to go we're going to have limited, we want to still give kids an opportunity to use that flex to get additional support, right? But if we have to look at being strategic about pulling some of those flexes and having more ACP in place, we can definitely do that. Other things that we have to look at is looking at how we're implementing ACP into all of our core areas, right? So I know our tech ed has like their trades day. A does an excellent job of getting kids into the environments of agriculture and letting them see what kind of options they have from a career standpoint. Could be something, and I'm not speaking for our English department right now, but this is an example. Like if resume writing becomes part of our curriculum, or excuse me, part of our unit on resume writing could be implemented into our community writing standards for English. So those types of things we have to explore and go back to the drawing board on. I think it's an opportunity for us to do that with this adjustment.
Yeah, I definitely appreciated the briefing, and I really appreciate the work that was kind of done several years ago to kind of get ahead of the game on this. To try to do whatever we could to make our kids ready for their futures. Now we just have legislature that kind of takes us in the same direction in a different pathway.
It is frustrating. We were definitely, forward thinking. So the good news is, I guess there's a silver lining, we haven't fully implemented this yet, right? So we do have a sliver of time, and it didn't come out like in March with this and tell us we have to do this when we already have a future ready course underway. So I think we're in good shape from that standpoint.
Emily, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you phrased what we talked about last week up really well, and I think we all I said no, and now I'm at talking, but I think we all agree that there are disadvantages and advantages to all of the options, but I think that you guys weighed all of them really well and summarized them really well for us. And I thought the committee collectively agreed that option 3 was the best option moving forward, and just recognizing the amount of work that went into, when state legislature kind of comes down with the hammer and says, you've got so much time to implement this, and you guys really just went for it. And so I appreciate that.
Maybe one of the members of the curriculum committee would be willing to
I'll make
make a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion to approve the graduation requirement change proposal as stated, having personal finance become a requirement for, we're starting next year, correct?
Yeah, so option 3, which is
Right.
personal finance, option 3, personal finance for the requirements starting for
Next
class
year.
of 2026.
Right.
And then moving the future ready course to an elective class.
Yes.
No longer a graduation requirement.
And I'll second that motion.
Motion by Sarah, second by Emily. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Russ.
I'd like to comment when, I didn't know what the specifics of this, I saw that it was signed. And I thought it just required that those various elements of financial planning and so on had to be taught. I didn't realize it had to be like a credit course. And I guess I would wonder about the possibility of doing or thinking about looking at planning for something similar for basic civics. I've seen and read a lot of discussion on, some of the national issues and problems we have are because kids don't know how our government is supposed to work.
So they are required to have they had to pass the civics exam. That's
Okay.
part of graduation, and I know Martin Luther King here deals with that.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
We got
that covered.
we got her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Kim's up for the next one. I need to step out for just a minute and then I'll step back in.
Okay. Kim, we've got the 22-23 finance audit review.
Best for last. All right, so in your packets, you have 3 documents. There's a financial audit, the executive summary, and then I kind of picked up some pages that I'd like to go over with you tonight. So our fiscal year ended June 30th of 2023. That was for the 22-23 year. We hired Clifton Larson Allen to come in and audit us. They came in August. They stayed for 3 days in person, and they worked behind the scenes since then and wrapped up the audit early December and sent that to the state. So you'll see in the documents that we did have a clean audit report, meaning that it's materially presented fairly as stated. So when they come in, they do a lot of typical types of reviews, but then they focus in on certain areas. And I don't get to know what those areas are until they come. So I have to have all the areas good before they come. But this year they focused on ESSER, of course, because that's such a large dollar amount that we had gotten in. But they also focused on our pupil transportation. We get about $170,000 of pupil transportation each year. So in our $26 million budget, it's not the biggest thing that I work on in the year. Anyway, if a student lives from 0 to 2 miles, we get like $10 a year. And if they live 12 miles away, we might get $30. It's not a lot. So anyway, we get $170,000 overall, so it's important, and I do file it. So our transportation department has kept track of that in a spreadsheet over the years, like how far a student lives away, and then I take it and I report it. And you'll see in the documentation that they found a significant deficiency on the pupil transportation because they found one student that was miscoded in this category and one student miscoded actually crossed and was a wash. But I need to have internal controls in place in order to prevent that from happening. So this is actually timely because the transportation department is implementing a new software, which is really great. So now we'll be able to take that data right from there as opposed to a manual spreadsheet where people can make a lot of mistakes, right? So I feel like solid going forward that we're going to be able to take care of that. The other internal control deficiency is we do not prepare our own financial report. So this is the financial report. I do not have the software or the means to prepare it in this format. I have the know-how, we don't have that, and we don't have the financial resources to do that. So almost every school district in the state would have that on their audit report. Each year I strive to only have that item, but this year there was the pupil transportation listed in there. But it's a good review. I go through all the things that we do internally to make sure, we're minimizing risk and that, funds aren't being misappropriated. I go through that with them each year, and as you can see, there isn't any other issues listed. So what I am here tonight is I do need you to approve and accept these as stated. So that is in our minutes. We use these to borrow money. I use this, the money that we put in this budget to defease the $800,000 is reliant upon these documents. So this helps us do all the financial things that we need to do during the year that says that we're doing our job. So any questions? Did everyone read this?
So that was really the case of that misallocating 2 students was enough to make that a significant.
Yeah, so of the, 1,000 students that ride the bus, they did sample testing and they found it was a sample testing, but then they extrapolated over the population, and it was really one in the 0 to 2 or 0 to 2 category and one in the 10 to 12 category. Just
Our auditors, they need to
Yeah,
do
they
something
found
to,
it.
They need to do something to justify the big.
Yeah,
big
and-
bill they said that.
And Brandy did spend a lot of time, and she looked at that, and it was just something, just simple, how like a road name changed, and it was weird. It was just a common error. Now, the software shouldn't allow that to happen. There's no human, the software's telling you how far it is. It's like linked to maps and stuff like that, so.
I think that we accept the audit report.
I will second.
Motion by Ken, second by Carrie. Any other discussion?
Thank you, Kim. I think it's actually really impressive that just the amount of work that you do, that those were the only 2 findings. I mean, knowing just how auditors nitpick at a whole lot of things, it just shows just how much work and how much we appreciate and value you, so.
Yes, absolutely.
Very familiar with audits. And yeah, this is impressive that, we work hard in the banking industry. We work very hard to try to follow every rule, and they find something every time, and to have only these minor infractions in my mind, that's impressive. So.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Ryan, you got your glasses on?
I do. Got my eyes back on. I will move that we consider convening in a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.851E to conduct specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss the status of negotiations concerning a real estate easement and to discuss options for the sale of school district property. In Wisconsin statute 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction, namely to update the board regarding O'Connell Falls Elementary School administration.
Motion by Brian, second by Chad. Sarah, when you're ready, if you can.
Hill,
Yes.
Trudeau,
Yes.
Harder,
Yes.
Hurley, Palmer,
Yes.
Schindel, yes, Gardrick.
Yes.
Time is, no, it is 39.
8:39.
Yeah. So we're gonna just take a little bit of a break because we have, Jenna joining us at 8:45.